Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a deep dive into a true classic, Gone with the Wind, but we're setting the film aside and really digging into the novel itself. To understand Scarlett O'Hara and her world in the South before, during, and after the Civil War, it's fiction, of course, but it still offers a window into a really pivotal moment in American history, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's packed with insights into the social dynamics and attitudes of the time. You've got plantation life, romance, the war, and the whole messy business of Reconstruction. It's a lot to unravel.
Yeah, definitely a lot to unpack there. So maybe we should start with Scarlett herself. I mean, she's definitely not your typical heroine issue. She's strong, she's resourceful, but there's also that like ruthless streak. She's kind of a puzzle.
You hit the nail on the head. What makes her so fascinating is that Margaret Mitchell, the author, doesn't shy away from her flaws. Like, right alongside her strengths, you see her vanity and selfishness and her manipulative tactics, like how she marries Frank Kennedy just to save Tara, her family's plantation. It makes you really question her morals.
Yeah, you could say that. It's like she's always playing some kind of game,
Hmm.
always thinking a few steps ahead. But does that mean she never really connects with people? Or is it all just a performance to get what she wants?
That's a really good question. It definitely makes you think about her relationships. Take her obsession with Ashley Wilkes, for example.
Oh, right, Ashley.
Yeah.
He's like the embodiment of that idealized Old South, isn't he?
Exactly. And it seems like her love for him kind of blinds her to the reality of the situation, and to other possibilities for her life, both romantic and otherwise.
It's almost as if she's clinging to a past that's gone forever.
And that ties into a bigger theme in the novel, the longing for the pre-war South, with its elegance and certainty. Her desperate attempts to hold on to that world as it crumbles around her are at the core of Scarlett's story, I think.
Definitely a recurring theme.
Yeah.
And that brings us to Tara, the plantation itself.
Mm.
For Scarlett, it's not just a place. It's like an extension of herself. She's fiercely protective of it, and even of the family members she fights with.
Exactly. Tara represents everything she's fighting to preserve. Her heritage, her social standing, her very identity. It's a symbol of that lost world of the antebellum South that Mitchell portrays so vividly.
She really does paint a detailed picture of that world. The grand balls, the courtship rituals, the way appearances mattered so much. Even her descriptions of 12 Oaks, the Wilkes plantation, it's like you've stepped back in time.
Oh, it is seductive, isn't it? That romanticized vision of a bygone era. But Mitchell doesn't let us forget the harsh realities behind that polished surface.
Right. It's easy to forget that the wealth of planters, like the Wilkeses, rested entirely on the labor of enslaved people. Even if they're portrayed as relatively kind, you can't escape the fact that they benefited from a system built on exploitation.
Absolutely. And Mitchell even touches on those internal conflicts within the South about slavery. It suggested that even some who supported the Confederacy struggled with the moral implications.
And then, of course, the Civil War comes along and turns Scarlett's world completely upside down.
It's really interesting how Mitchell shows the impact of the war on civilians, especially women. They faced shortages, inflation, the constant fear of losing loved ones.
It's a whole other side of the war, right? The home front experience.
And Scarlett's time in Atlanta during the siege is a perfect example.
She's thrown into a situation where she has to take charge, make difficult choices,
Yeah.
and face those brutal realities of war firsthand.
That's when her resourcefulness really shines through, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. She has to shed some of her youthful illusions to survive.
And she has to grow up fast.
Exactly. She buries her first husband, Charles, learns to manage a plantation, and makes that dangerous journey back to Tara. The war strips away her naivete, revealing this inner strength she didn't even know she had.
It's like she's forced to evolve. But then comes Reconstruction, and that brings a whole new set of challenges for her. It's a period that's often overlooked.
Definitely. And Mitchell captures the chaos and uncertainty of the post-war South so well. You've got former Confederates like Scarlett trying to rebuild their lives.
And at the same time, you have carpetbaggers, Northerners who came south after the war, and scalawags, who were Southerners seen as collaborating with the North. They were viewed as opportunistic outsiders, stirring up resentment.
It was a recipe for tension, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And those wounds of the war ran deep. It would take generations for them to heal.
And in the middle of all this upheaval is Scarlett's relationship with Rhett Butler. It gets even more complicated, doesn't it?
Oh, it definitely does. Rhett's such an intriguing character.
He's wealthy, charming, clearly attracted to Scarlett.
But he also sees through her manipulations, her obsession with Ashley.
You get the sense that he's drawn to her but also wary of her.
Their relationship is this constant push and pull, a battle of wills, and it all plays out against the backdrop of a society that's trying to redefine itself.
It's no wonder their love story became so iconic.
It's a classic for a reason.
Now, the title Gone with the Wind is kind of a metaphor, don't you think, for all the huge changes that sweep over the South?
Oh, definitely. I mean, a powerful wind just seems to blow away everything Scarlett thought she knew. You know, those leisurely days on plantations, the social hierarchy, the whole way of life. She's left trying to figure out this new reality where survival is more important than appearances.
But she keeps trying to rebuild that lost world, right? Whether it's through Ashley or restoring Tara exactly as it was, or even her pursuit of wealth and status. Do you think she's clinging to the past because she's afraid of the unknown? Or is it something else?
Maybe it's a bit of both, you know? The past represents stability, a sense of order that the war completely shattered. But I think her desire for wealth, it goes beyond just security. It's like she's trying to reclaim power, prove her worth in a world that's been turned upside down.
So it's almost like money becomes her weapon in the fight against change.
That's a really interesting way to put it. Money gives her control, you know, a way to shape her own destiny when everything feels so unpredictable. And for a woman in the South after the war, economic independence was a pretty big deal. It gave her agency in a society that didn't really approve of that for women.
Yeah, her business ventures definitely challenged those traditional roles women were expected to fill. Like when she takes over the lumber mill, she's not afraid to get her hands dirty.
Exactly. She defies all those expectations and shows how resilient she is and how savvy she is as a businesswoman. But that success comes at a price.
Oh, absolutely. She faces so much prejudice, so much opposition, especially from those who think she's stepping out of line.
Right, she makes enemies along the way, sacrificing relationships and connections in her pursuit of wealth. It makes you wonder what she ultimately gains from all that material success and what she loses in the process.
That's a good point. It's like she's winning all these battles, but losing the war for her own happiness.
Like her strengths, her determination, and resourcefulness, they almost become weaknesses when they're misdirected. She overcomes all these external challenges. But her internal world is still a battlefield.
It all goes back to that tension in her character, the conflict between survival and happiness. I mean, can you really survive if you sacrifice your own well-being?
That's the big question Gone with the Wind makes us confront. It's not just a simple story about overcoming adversity. It really explores the human cost of resilience, the sacrifices we make to survive, and the fact that true fulfillment is so elusive.
And we can't really talk about Gone with the Wind without addressing the elephant in the room, right? The portrayal of slavery and race relations. It's a topic that still sparks debate today.
Definitely. The book was written in the 1930s when racial prejudice was deeply ingrained in American society. And while Mitchell does capture the complexities of the South, the book also reflects the biases of that time.
It's been criticized, and rightfully so, for romanticizing the antebellum South and relying on stereotypes of Black characters.
We have to acknowledge those criticisms and approach the novel with a critical eye. You know, appreciate the storytelling and historical scope, but also recognize its limitations and how those representations can be harmful.
It reminds us that even great works of literature can be flawed, and that we have a responsibility as readers to think about those flaws and to understand the historical context.
Exactly. It's a chance to start a dialogue, to understand how the past shapes the present, and to challenge ourselves to confront uncomfortable truths.
Now, switching gears a bit, I'm really curious about Scarlett's relationship with love. I mean, she's clearly a passionate woman, but her choices often seem driven by a desire for security or social status rather than actual affection.
You're right. Take her first marriage to Charles Hamilton, for instance. It's mostly motivated by what society expects and a longing for stability in such a chaotic time.
And even her pursuit of Ashley, it's like she's in love with the idea of him, what he represents, more than who he really is.
Exactly. It's like she's in love with an image, and that prevents her from seeing the genuine love that might be right there in front of her.
And then there's Rhett. He seems to see through her facade. He challenges her at every turn. The relationship is so intense, full of passion and conflict.
Oh, it's fascinating. Rhett is so captivated by her spirit, but also frustrated by her refusal to let go of the past. You know, he represents a different kind of future for her, one where she could embrace change and create a new identity for herself. But she's so stuck on recreating a world that doesn't exist anymore.
It's almost like they represent two opposing forces, the pull of the past and the potential of the future,
Mm.
locked in this constant struggle.
And that tension, that unresolved conflict, is part of what makes their love story so captivating. It mirrors the South's own struggle, grappling with the loss of a way of life and the uncertainty of what lies ahead.
It's interesting how those personal struggles are woven into the larger historical narrative. There's a scene near the end of the book that really stuck with me. When Scarlett is fleeing Atlanta with Melanie and her baby.
Are you talking about when she realizes she doesn't care about the Confederate money? She just wants to get Melanie and the baby to safety.
Yes, it's one of the few times we see Scarlett act selflessly. She puts the needs of others above her own survival. And for a moment, you see her potential for growth, for a different kind of strength.
It is a powerful moment of transformation, but it's fleeting, like you said. She falls back into her old patterns, focused on getting back to Torah, that sense of security.
It makes you wonder, can someone like Scarlett really change? Can she break free from her past and embrace a new way of being?
That's the big question, right? And Gone with the Wind doesn't give us easy answers. It makes us think about the complexities of human nature, the power of the past, and the possibility of redemption, even for characters who are deeply flawed.
It almost feels tragic, you know? She has a glimmer of selflessness, but then she's right back to her old ways. It's like, is she doomed to keep making the same mistakes, always chasing something she can't have?
Yeah, it shows just how hard it is to change, right? Even when you get a glimpse of a better version of yourself, it's so easy to slip back into those old patterns, especially when they're tied up with, like, survival and loss.
It's like that saying, you can't go home again. Scarlett's so focused on making Tara exactly how it was before, but she can't erase the war or the changes it brought. Maybe it's not about recreating the past, but about using what you learned from it, taking that strength and resilience with you.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Growth isn't always a straight line, right?
Yeah.
There are setbacks and detours, but
Yeah.
all those experiences, they shape who we become. And maybe Tara, for Scarlett, is more than just a place. Maybe it represents the values and memories she carries inside.
So it's not about literally rebuilding the plantation,
Yeah.
but about rebuilding her sense of self,
Yeah.
drawing on the lessons she's learned.
Exactly. Finding a way to bring the past into the present, to honor those memories, but also embrace a new future. And that's what survival really means. Adapting and evolving, finding a way to thrive even after huge loss.
And what about love? Can she ever really be happy with Rhett? Or is that doomed because she can't let go of Ashley?
It's such a complex love story and kind of heartbreaking. I mean, they're attracted to each other, but their personalities clash, and Scarlett's got all this emotional baggage. Rhett offers her a real connection, but she's so caught up in her own struggles that she doesn't see it.
And then they lose their daughter, Bonnie Blue. It's like that just shatters whatever peace they had managed to build.
Bonnie's death really exposes the cracks in their relationship. Rhett's devastated, He turns to alcohol and withdraws emotionally. But Scarlett's still focused on Ashley. She can't give Rhett the support he needs.
It's a reminder that even the strongest love can be fragile, vulnerable to grief and unspoken emotions.
And they can't communicate, they can't really see each other's pain. And that's what leads to their separation in the end. It's a tragic ending. It makes you wonder if things could have been different if they'd just made different choices.
We're left with this feeling of hope and despair at the same time. Hope because Scarlett is so resilient. She survives war, poverty, loss, and she never gives up fighting for what she believes in. But despair because, well, she keeps sabotaging herself, clinging to illusions that only hurt her.
That's what makes Gone with the Wind so brilliant, I think. It's not a simple story with easy answers. It's messy, it's complex. It's about human nature, about our contradictions and triumphs and failures, and it makes us think about uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Gone with the Wind, what's the one thing you'd want our listeners to take away?
I would say this: Gone with the Wind is about survival, yes, but it's also about change, about loss, about searching for meaning in a world that keeps changing. Scarlett's story, even with all her flaws, reminds us that we can endure almost anything. But real fulfillment comes from letting go of the past, embracing the present and building a future that honors who we were and who we want to be.
It's a reminder that we're all works in progress, always changing and adapting. And sometimes, just like Scarlett, we have to lose ourselves to find ourselves again. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Gone with the Wind. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.